ఏదో వీడియో డిఫెక్ట్ లాగా ఉంది కరెక్టే.
Be the rah-rah person and be a little bit, take a strategic initiative in terms of, how we could win a game or how you could build a team. So this kind of goes back almost 30, 35 years ago when I was a kid.
Oh.
Over the years when I was in college, so on and so forth, I saw that, I could speak well, I had the ability to stand in front of people and, do public speaking, and I was never shy of talking to people. And something else that I learned over the years, and I'm talking about self-awareness out here, is, I never ran away from a difficult conversation. And something when I was in my undergrad days, I read this book, How to Influence People and Make Friends by Dale Carnegie.
Oh.
And that was an eye-opener for me personally in terms of, how to be a good leader, how to, emote, how to connect with people, so on and so forth. Over the years, I was in grad school, I was studying, whether it was, leading the International Students Club here in the United States of the various schools that I attended, or being, a member of a professional group in the university setting. I've always taken the initiative to, connect with people, bond with people, and sort of, energize people to get something done.
Oh.
In my professional career, I started off as an individual contributor, but I have taken the initiative, how I can connect with people and understand what their concerns are. So it has been a gradual evolution, for lack of a better term, if I might say that. And now I'm in a formal role. I think each one of us is a leader in our own personal lives, whether it's in a family setting, whether it is in a social setting, whether it's in a professional setting. It's all about recognizing it, nurturing it, and making sure that you're constantly training yourself to be a better individual, to be a better leader, and how you connect with people. Leadership is a matter of the heart. It is not a matter of the mind. And how do you sort of do it? I'm a student of leadership. I'm a work in progress, but that's how I sort of started, on this leadership journey and where I am today. Did I answer your question, Mike?
Yes, and it begs many, many follow-up questions, of which I'm sure I don't have time to ask all of today. Thank you very much. I want to first jump over to Tauseef and see if you have any follow-up questions there.
Not for now. Please continue. Yes.
Well, I'll ask one of my own then, Sid. You had mentioned two things that really caught my mind. One of them is you said you showed a lot of initiative, and you had initiative. What does this mean now that you're a leader? What does it mean to you for younger people if they want to stand out or if they want to grab your attention? How would you see them? What kind of behavior would they have to show you that shows that they have initiative?
That's a great question. When I talk about initiative, I'm referring to being proactive. I'm referring to sort of, jumping into a situation where things are not super clear, the direction in which we need to move forward is not super clear, and there is not a whole lot of consensus in terms of how we need to approach it. Especially in situations like this, it's a great opportunity for an individual, especially somebody, who is aspiring to be a leader or who is aspiring to sort of, figure something out and move forward, I think this is an opportunity which should not be missed. I call it as, a call to action. There is never a script for how to behave, how to act, how to perform. You sort of dive into it. You get off the inertia. Newton's law, everybody continues to be in a state of rest or motion unless it is sort of, otherwise impacted by some sort of a force. So here is this internal stimulus where you are sort of, which sort of gets into action.
I have muted somebody's phone there. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining as well. So, so that's how I call it, as taking initiative, not asking for something to come to you, but sort of being proactive, reaching out to an individual. It could be in a professional setting, it could be in a good cause, it could be a political cause as well. That's what I call as initiative. And if I look at several leaders, whether it was Martin Luther King or whether somebody, Mahatma Gandhi, they were not happy with status quo. They wanted to change what the situation was. They could have led a life like everybody else, but they decided not to do so. So, those are my inspirations. And I implore each and every individual who wants to be a good product leader, there is no script to take an initiative. And an opportunity, chaos, confusion is a great opportunity for each one of us to take initiative and outshine others and sort of build something out of it. Even when things are going really well, you can take an initiative as to how to optimize things, how to stabilize things, and how to improve things. That itself is an initiative in itself. So, there can be, that's kind of how I look at initiative. Did I answer your question, Mike?
Oh, totally. And I really liked something you said as well. And a lot of times I think people, when the situation is unclear or it's chaotic or there's confusion, a lot of people kind of stop talking and they kind of look for a leader. They hope somebody else is going to stand out and speak up. But it sounds like what you're saying is that anybody can kind of just jump in and start speaking and at least get the conversation moving.
Absolutely. Just break the status quo. And I think that's what is more important about taking an initiative. It could be even as simple as, hey, the water cooler has broken down. Nobody has reported it. If somebody takes the initiative to report it to facilities engineering or so on and so forth, just to get it, replaced or sort of fixed or something, that itself is an initiative in a small way. And small things like that go a long way in sort of, team building, recognition, and sort of getting people excited and just having a bias for that action. And I think that's something which is extremely important.
Thank you very much for offering that technique and that tip there. I appreciate it. Well, thank you, and move on to question number 2. This one I think is especially interesting. When did you first hear about product management?
That's once again, a great question. Product management is a term which I heard more recently. I have heard about management of technology. I took a course almost 20 years ago. At that time, the concept of product management wasn't there. I knew about project management, program management, but in my opinion, product management is a more recent concept, especially when we are kind of focusing on the consumer or the consumers and how we can sort of integrate technology, marketing, business, sales, and we sort of, encapsulate all of those functions, and then, they sort of become the whole product because, all of those things, lead us build a good product so that we can be more customer centric. So I think, it's a more recent term that I've heard after I moved to Seattle, if I can be very candid about it. I think it's a more recent concept, and I've done product management in my own humble way. There's no script for it again. You dive into it and you're a jack of all trades. At the end of the day, what I've always seen is that, hey, if you're customer focused, whether internal or external, and you are a good collaborator, product management sort of falls into place with the right kind of sponsorship and with the right autonomy and the right environment in an organization. So there are a lot of ifs out there, but definitely product management, especially evangelized by the big companies in the Seattle area, Amazon and Microsoft, that's where I think the genesis of the product management started, and that's how I sort of picked it up.
Very interesting. Thank you. Just a question that came to me off the top of my head is, and I know you do a lot of networking too, Sid. Have you ever come across other companies that don't have product managers?
Yes, I can say that in my current company, we don't have a clearly defined job role as a product manager. We call them as program managers or project managers. But if you look at the job description, they specifically are doing all the functions of what a product manager would potentially do. It is not just about cost, scope, and schedule that a project manager typically does, but just looking at the entire ecosystem of what it takes to develop a product, stabilize a product, as well as optimize a product. They're doing all those functions. So yes, so I'm aware of companies that specifically don't have a product manager role, but the people who are actually managing some of those functions, they're actually doing what a product manager would typically do in a product management company or companies that have those positions.
Sure. I've heard Microsoft does a similar thing with their product managers. Very neat. Thank you. I'll jump down to my question number 3 here. What do you think product management means to two types of people moving into the role? The first type of person is somebody who's more mature with a lot of working experience. And the second type of person could be a student aspiring to get involved in product management.
Great question. I'm going to first start off with somebody, who is fairly mature, who is fairly experienced, who has been doing this. When I think about, and I'll try to sort of, talk about myself, my persona and what I'm trying to do in my role. When I think about product manager or product leader, it's all about the customer. It's all about collaboration. It's all about, making sure that, we know what we are working on and why we are working on it. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Those are more strategic questions. And those are some of the things that are very, very important for, especially in a more mature role or somebody who is, more senior. For somebody who is aspiring to be a product manager, first and foremost thing is, have your technical chops pretty strong. Try to be as flexible and nimble if required. And I think those are some of the 2 key things that I would advise people to do. And this is an advice that was shared by my advisor when I was leaving grad school almost 15 years ago. He said, Siddharth, no matter what you do, become an expert in at least one specific area. They call it as, what do they call it? Full stack developer. That's a term that is thrown around. Or they also call it as a T-shaped engineer or a developer. You really need to be very deep in one area of specialty. So that's definitely encourage the younger folks, younger aspiring product managers to focus on. And for somebody, who is more senior, a broad, plethora of skills, soft skills, hard skills, strategic skills, I think they are needed to be effective as a product manager. And that's the advice that I'd like to share with them.
Fantastic. And I like that term too, the T-shape skill structure. It's used across many industries. Neat. Tauseef, would you like to add any follow-up questions to this?
Yeah. So Sid, in terms of for the aspiring product managers, you mentioned about technical learning and then T-shaped, like which particular skills you think they should deep dive and become more expert, you can say, or more technically, or any capability or any skills you think they should deep dive and learn more as an aspiring product manager?
I know at the outset, you talk about the 3 C's to be an effective product manager. Communication is something which is extremely important, and collaboration, as well as having the cultural dexterity. I'm assuming that, the 3 C's are part and parcel of the development of a product manager, but I'm going to focus a little bit more on the technical side of what I mean by that is, nowadays most companies they don't call themselves as, oh, I'm a healthcare company taking care of patients. For example, Providence St. Joseph Health, where I work, we are trying to morph into something else. We want to be known as a technology company that is taking care of patients. That is what Tesla is trying to call itself as well. We are a technology company that is transporting people from point A to point B. They don't call themselves, they're an automobile manufacturing company. Mm-hmm. So technology is something, which is going to be all pervasive. And all companies in the future need to be run like a technology company if they can be actually primed for success. So technology is going to be, underpinning a lot of the work that different companies will be doing. So in my opinion, depending upon the industry that you are in, depending upon what you're trying to manufacture, what is your core competency, you need to focus on technologies like that. So let me give you, I don't want to be very abstract, but I want to give some concrete examples. So if you are, working for a healthcare organization, electronic medical records, they are the bedrock of any healthcare system. Try to get exposure about, what does the electronic medical record do? What are some of the pain points of electronic records at this point in time? How does it impact the customer? And what can technology do to sort of alleviate some of those pain points? It could be hardcore coding. It could be a question about interoperability. It could be a question about API development. It could be a question about big data collection, so on and so forth. So those are some of the hard skills that I definitely encourage people to pick up, because that will help them. If you're working for a company like, Tesla, so on and so forth, automotive engineering, you got to know it, even if you're not an engineer, know the basics, what does it take to run a battery powered car? This is not an internal combustion engine. This is a battery powered car, but having some knowledge about, transmission, the engine, the battery management, the life cycle of the battery, traction, so on and so forth. I think they will be super, super critical to sort of know in terms of what the technology is, what is the key driver that keeps the company going. So that's how I approach in terms of approaching some of the technical components that somebody needs to know. But, the icing on the cake is always the 3 C's that Tauseef, you shared with us to be an effective product leader.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to question 4. How would you describe the product management tasks from your role as a director in the healthcare industry?
As we all know, there is not a script for product management. It's a new field, it's an evolving field. And if I can be brutally honest with all of you, I just, make it up as I go. There is no right approach. There is no wrong approach. And it's one of the most difficult things to actually manage, because, you're tasked with the, responsibility of putting together a roadmap. And I work in a clinical setting and I'm not a clinician. So how do I collaborate and connect with people so that the clinicians, the people who are actually feeling the pain, they feel comfortable talking to me? How do I understand their clinical lingo and able to transfer it to the data scientists, to the architects, to the developers who are developing the solutions? I think that is something which is extremely important. And while I'm engaging in all these conversations, I continuously focus on, hey, what is the cost of doing this? What can be done within a certain period of time? What is the time to value? What does the return on investment looks like? How shall we get started? How do we start small? How do we think about, the big picture of solving a real problem, but also continuously demonstrating to the organization that we're gaining forward traction? I think those are some of the key things that I like my people to focus on. If you have a project management background, it is fantastic, but project management background is not enough, because project management does not typically focus on the life cycle of the product. It typically does not focus on what the end customer is actually looking for. It is not very agile. So that's how I try to sort of, script my product management role. So that is how I like to, think through what I'm trying to do. And that is how I'd like to address some of the challenges that we are facing. And, because of this unscripted, unorthodox style of operations, despite all of those, being unorthodox and unscripted, I've been pretty successful in my current role. So I was leading the Epic Clinical Optimization Program within Providence St. Joseph Health. And within a span of about 12 months, I was able to completely turn it around. not because I was coming up with any fresh ideas or great ideas, but it was about collaboration, and it was about developing a roadmap. It was about partnering with people and making sure that we are sticking to the core concepts of project management while being sensitive to the fact that we need to demonstrate a return on investment in terms of what we're trying to do, so that our customers were feeling heard. They felt like there was positive momentum. And that was one of the key reasons as to why I could build a very effective program within a span of 12 months across a huge organization, working with a lot of stakeholders that was extremely diverse. And the program is still running, and it is super successful within the organization.
Wow. It's really quite amazing within 12 months there.
And something else, if I might just throw into this, is a product manager, and in my case, or in my team that I lead, I used to have a team of about 15 product managers. And one thing that I really learned from them was, being humble and being a learn-it-all. That was the kind of mindset that, my teams had, and that was something which was super critical to the success of the team. I don't know what I don't know, and that was one of the key things that was written on our, in our office, board, so on and so forth, because that always made people humble. That what, yes, we might have overcome one challenge, but there are more challenges to come, and let's have the humility of a student, and let us learn it all, and let's continuously work on ways and means by which we can improve and optimize our program, our processes, our products, so on and so forth. That is something which is super, super critical in my opinion.
I have a follow-up question, Sid. Thank you for that. This one, in terms of the project managers who are looking for career transition, from project manager to product manager, and because you have managed project and program managers in your team, what do you suggest them? Like, what are some of the behavior challenges they face when they transition to this role of product manager? What are some of the behavior changes they should do or adapt to become a product manager?
Great question, Tauseef. I think the ability to see the forest while focusing on the trees, that is something which is super important. As a project manager, they kind of get stuck on the work breakdown structure or what are the key tasks that need to be completed. But as a product manager, the tasks are important, but you need to see within the context of the product life cycle, or in the context of the product ecosystem, or in the context of what does the customer or the stakeholder want. That is something that people need to see. And I think that is something which needs to be fostered, and we need to create a culture where people feel that they can experiment, they can learn, they can mistakes, and there needs to be safe environment. And that was, I had a saying within my team, and I still use it: think big, start small, and scale up. Rome was not built in a day, and nor was any great civilization, nor any great nation on this earth. It took a while, it took perseverance, it took grit to get us there. So focus on the big picture while focusing on the specific tasks, and be flexible and nimble. That was our mantra. That is how I built the team. And if you look at the NPS, the net positive score, initially when I started the program, people said, hey, this ain't gonna work, here are all the reasons. I said, just give me one attempt. I started with, n equal to 1. If there was a big project, I said, hey, this is the task, but let us try to tie it in what it means for the customer. Let us try to tie it in with what it means at the end. And from n equal to 1, I was able to scale it to about 80% of my team members who are pretty comfortable being good product managers within a span of about 17 months or so. And that was remarkable in terms of how that transition happened from being focusing on the trees versus having a view of the forest, and being able to sort of transition from the forest view to the tree view. And that was fantastic.
That's a very good one, Sid. And I completely agree that the big picture is very important to be a product manager. And one more thing I suggest to the the project managers who are aspiring to become a product manager is a critical thinking, ability to ask why you are doing that, because the moment they're traditionally wired to jump into the task and the project plan and the kickoff meeting, and it's like a machine going on, and if somebody stop them and say, hey, why you are doing that? Oh, this is approved projects, everybody sign off. No, doesn't matter who signed off, but why you are doing it. Yes. So that's where product manager, if somebody is listening here and is a project manager, want to become a product manager, one is very important. What Sid explained is seeing a big picture, holistic view of a product, and the second one is a critical thinking about why we are doing it, whether this makes sense or not for the business and for the customer. That's very good. Thank you. Please continue, Mike.
I think that phrase you used, first of all, thanks, Tauseef. And Sid, that phrase you used about seeing the forest while focusing on the trees is such an important perspective, I think, for not just product managers, but for so many people in life. Thank you for sharing that. Really good. I wonder if you've even answered some of my next question, which is, what challenges do you encounter for yourself, teams, stakeholders, and customers?
Great question. And, I have my own viewpoints, but I'd love to hear from you, Mike and Tauseef as well. I think organizational focus, that's one of the biggest challenges. Mm-hmm. A new initiative comes up, and it lasts for about 6 to 9 months or so, then they move on to something else. But especially in a complex ecosystem of an organization, which is pretty dynamic, how do you retain that focus? How do you demonstrate to the organization that we need to have the patience to take something to its logical conclusion, and we can demonstrate to the organization that there is a return on the investment? And how do we make sure that the time to value, the return on investment, and the focus, they are all sort of aligned? I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I've faced in most in some of the organizations that I've worked at. I'd love to hear it from you as well, Mike and Tauseef, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think, Sid, I agree with you. One thing I will add as a product manager is our organization is structured functionally. It's not structured by product. And what happened is the whole yearly planning and budgeting and all that happens from the functional leads. And then the product vision is somewhere in between. And then the product manager is running around to connect the dots. So most of the companies I have seen, except the big ones like Amazon and Google, the product funding does not happen at the yearly budgeting discussion or somewhere there at the high level. It happens quite late once the functional lead gets the budget. So I think the budget and the product are currently not aligned in the organizational structure, and it is challenge for product manager to get that. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, Tauseef, that's a very interesting point about PMs running around trying to connect the dots. I've heard that from many people. What would you do to change it if you had the power to?
There are companies who are changing the org structure. They're saying more horizontal or product-based teams. And then the culture of venture funding, or you pitch your idea and you get funded. So there are companies who are not following the traditional planning, budgeting, and they're keeping product as more about whoever idea is better and good for the customer and the organization will be funded. And every quarter the decision can change based on the progress made in that product, and if any new idea which is much better ROI for the customer and the business, that can take over. It does not matter who has what funding has been allocated to a functional leader. So disconnecting that budgeting from functional leader allocated. Marketing got a $1 billion budget and supply chain got a $500 million, and then marketing don't know how to spend $1 billion, but marketing is going to find many ways of spending $1 billion by the end of the year, but very few marketing leaders can say, hey, I'm giving my $400 million back to supply chain because I see a value there. It does not happen in this current organization structure. So I would suggest to look into that and make it more product-focused teams. And yes,
that's a really good point, I think. And as a leadership trainer and coach too, and also co-founder of Product Leaders Institute and Apex Point, we do see a large rise in our clients asking for training for product-based teams, and specifically how to go out and seek outside funding. So pitching to venture capitalists, or start doing things like Kickstarter, or shooting their own video to try to get funding in a unique way. And that's really interesting to hear you talk about it too, Tauseef, from your experience in the corporate world.
Thank you. And Mike, I would quickly jump to Ganesh. He has worked with me in T-Mobile, and I would request him to ask question to Sid. Ganesh, please unmute him if possible, Mike.
I will unmute him now.
So Ganesh is here, and Ganesh, please ask your question to Sid. He is our guest here and is a director in Providence Health and product management, program management. So please ask your question to our guest speaker. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Tauseef. First of all, I would like to ask, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, Ganesh, I can hear you very well. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Thanks, Siddharth. And first of all, thanks to Tauseef for extending the invitation. And also thank you guys for kind accommodation. So Siddharth, I really enjoyed, and also other panel members like explaining. And I have like a couple of quick questions. The first one is, I've been, under Tauseef when I was working as a platform owner, product owner. So is there any significant difference between the product owner and like a product manager, or what we need to be understanding perspective? Also in the mix, there is another thing called like platform managers also come into picture. So these three things, we always felt like, okay, there are three different paradigms that we need to look into it. And the second question is, as a product manager, what is the influential factors, both internally and externally, can derail their focus? For example, if the company decide to go in a kind of like a joint venture or a merger or a divestiture, or other influential factors like if the sales goes down or goes up, or new product introduction. So what do you think, and what we need to be aware of? Probably this is one of those questions in my mind. I thought of like throw it here and see if we can get something light out of that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ganesh. I think that was a long question, but let me make sure that I heard you correctly. So I'm going to paraphrase it, but a bit. So the first question was, what is the difference between a product owner, product manager, and a platform manager, right?
Right. Yep.
And the second question was,
influential factors. Yeah.
What are some of the key factors by which we can influence people within the organization internally, as well as folks outside the organization, right?
Right. Exactly. Got it.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with the second question, and then I'm going to come back to the first question. And the reason I say this is because you will see the connection between the two questions that you just asked. And I think it's a great question, and the way you sort of articulated it, it's fantastic. We struggle with it, but I'll try to take a stab at it, and then I'll look to Mike and Tauseef as well to chip in, okay? So to be a good influencer, it's not easy. And I was just talking to somebody this morning, and when I think about influencing people, I typically think about three levels of influence within an organization. There are people who report to me, there are people that are peers to me, and there are people that I have to manage up. So for all three things, this is internally within an organization. So externally, I'll come back to it. So just hold that thought. So when people that are reporting to me, just because they're part of my team, it doesn't mean that I control them. I encourage people to think freely, to articulate their thoughts, and we have a saying within our team, debate, decide, and commit. So, everybody has an opinion, they're allowed to share it. But when I'm trying to influence people within my team, I typically give them, here is a big problem that we're trying to solve. Here is a forest that we are trying to take care of. What would you do? And I give them certain guardrails within which they can operate, and they have been essentially given the freedom to come up with any kind of idea as long as it is within the guardrail, whether it is time to value, whether it is in trying to come up with a minimum viable product, so on and so forth. So that's one of the things by which I sort of engender creativity, independence, independent thinking, so on and so forth within the team, and that has gone a long way in sort of giving them the flexibility and the freedom to do what they can do best. And that's how I try to influence people within the group that I manage. With respect to peers, it's a little bit different because we all report to the same boss or different bosses, and they are my peers. Obviously, if you're in a setting when you're solving a common problem, giving the guardrails always works. But out there, one of the most important things that I've seen is how do you manage a conflict? That's the most important thing that I've seen. And how to manage a conflict, there is no script for it, but a few things that have really worked for me in the past is, have empathy, try to listen to people, try to understand what they're trying to see, be self-aware of who you are and what ticks you off. And once you have all those pieces in place, one of the things that I typically try to do is that, listen to their point of view, do some what if analysis, do some options analysis and present the facts and do it in a way, where people are seeing the value and being honest and transparent about, where you want to go and why you want to do this. And something that I have seen that really works, I want to do it this way because blah, 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 blah. That is something, it's pithy, it is short, but it clearly makes the point. And that has been something which has succeeded for me. In fact, one of the things, we are coming off a merger and acquisition. And so there is a lot of cultural inertia and a lot of cultural debt between two organizations. But because of the openness, because of the transparency, because of the empathy, and because I know who I am, I'm trying to manage the conflicts. And in fact, people want to work with me in multiple products and projects that requires a lot of collaboration. The third thing, which is, how do you, influence people, up? It's about making their life easy. Be pithy, be concise, have a punchline. If you can tell a story to them in 30 seconds, go for it. Storytelling is super important, but you need to punch it in within 30 seconds. If they want more information, they can always ask you more, but you need to have more information to share with them. But go with the punchline and then justify if they ask you. And it's about managing up, and that's how I sort of influence people. And all of this, whether you're managing up, whether you're talking to your peers, whether you're talking to your direct reports, with having the three techniques that I just described, it creates trust, it fosters mutual respect, and that is a good way to influence people and move on.
Wonderful.
In terms of influencing outside the organization, what I've typically seen is that, being a thought leader, having a lot of visibility in terms of, having done things, LinkedIn is a great way to socialize and connect with people. If you're commenting on stuff, if you're posting articles, if you have an academic degree, which sort of demonstrates that you're a subject matter expert, that's a great way to influence people. People refer to peer-reviewed journals, they're reading all these professional articles. And if you have a presence out there in terms of what you do, and if you're a known thought leader or aspiring to be a thought leader, you're automatically at a pedestal where you have been given that power or that informal authority to be an influencer. Make use of it, but also to be a good influencer, you need to be influenced as well. And I think having the flexibility where, you're learning, you're continuously growing, I think those are some of the ways by which you can also influence people outside of the organization as well. Let me pause and let, Tauseef and Mike, if you want to chime in before I move on to the next question.
Mike, you want to add something, or you want me to?
I have a comment, but nothing to add. So Tauseef, go ahead.
Sid, I would say, please complete your second question, then I will add few things in
Okay.
the influence part. Yes.
Okay. So the second question was, what is the difference between a product manager, a product owner, and a platform manager? Good question. I'm going to be a little bit academic at this stage because, different companies have different approaches to it. When I think about a product owner, I'm thinking about the person who is going to be consuming the product, or the person who is sort of evangelizing the product, or somebody who's going to be responsible for the product feels. That's who I call as a product owner. The buck stops with him or her, depending upon what they are. And it could, in a healthcare setting where I work, especially when product requests come into me, it is typically either a physician leader, whether it's a nursing leader, it's a pharmacy leader. They are typically who the product owners are. It could be either to, add some bells and whistles to a product. It could be developing a new product, so on and so forth. A product manager is somebody, I could be seen as a product manager where I'm kind of the facilitator of orchestrating multiple organizational functions, and I align them in a way which is sort of geared towards taking care of the product that will take care of the needs of the product owner. So that's what the product manager does. And in terms of a platform owner, the way I look at it, a platform is the same platform can be in service to multiple product managers that ultimately benefits multiple product owners. So a platform is kind of a combination of people, it's a combination of process, it's a combination of technology, it's a combination of data, all sort of packaged in a way where multiple product managers can plug into it and try to derive information, capability, tools, ideas, so on and so forth, that can actually be used in service to the product owner. That's a distinction that I am thinking of.
Thank you. Thank you. Good.
Ganesh, you want more from me, or you're good for now?
I think we lived through it, for the past 1 year.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so let me add for the audience who's going to listen to the recording. Let me add one or two things here. For the influence topic is a leadership topic, Ganesh, and leadership is all about influence. That's it. Leader influence, followers get influenced by leader, and that relationship becomes leadership. There is no leader without influence, and there is no follower who is not influenced. So that's the definition is first. The second one is the one I follow is John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. I will quickly go through the definition of each of the 5 in 30 seconds or 1 minute. And you will see that why I am saying leadership and is all about influence. The 5 levels of leadership, the first level, which is a very lower level, is a position level, where you get a leadership position and you become a team lead or supervisor, manager, or director and all. And then you get a power now of that leadership power of becoming that leadership position, having leadership position. And it's a very low level in that 5 levels as per John Maxwell. And it's saying, he said that people follow because they have to. Like, this is a power. You have a power, you have a position, and people follow because they have to. So if your team is following you, it's not because they like you, it's because you have a power of that position. The second level, now some people move to the next level in the leadership, and it is a level of permission, which is a relationship level, which is people follow because they want to. It's not they have, they want to, because they start liking you. They build a connection with you, and then the leader and the team members, they have a connection now, and that relationship connection, and that's why the team members are following a leader. The third level in the hierarchy is production, and in that level, the definition is people follow because of what you have done for the organization, because they get inspired by the results you have delivered, and they come to know that that leader, he or she has delivered that, or made the organization better, or improved, or whatever. And those stories get inspired, and then people start following that leader. Like you and I, we follow Steve Jobs or many other, even we have not met them, but we become the followers because what they have done. The fourth level is people development, where people follow because of what you have done for them. It is completely about a leader is investing his time and energy to make sure his team member is developing and also becoming a leader from a follower. So that's the fourth level. And the fifth and last level is the pinnacle level, which is at a respect level, where people follow because of who you are and what you represent. So it's nothing about what you have done and what you own and what your position is. It's just because who you are, and people follow you just by your name. And there are leaders like that we have in history, and we also have now in the organization. People just follow them by who they are, and that's a pinnacle level. So I like this definition of 5 level of influence, why people follow a leader. And if there is a leader and nobody is following that leader, it means he is not a leader. Hope it's clear now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Very well
Mike.
said, Tauseef. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Tauseef. I really love those quotes that you find. It. John C. Maxwell is an excellent leader and a coach. Thank you all very much. Thank you too for the question and the response, Sid. In addition there, Tauseef. I think one last question here, though it may have already been answered in many ways throughout other questions, is what advice would you have for people who have mature working experience? If you're to summarize, let's say, Sid, if you're to summarize it into 30 seconds or into 1 minute here, what is some quick advice you'd give to 2 types of people? The person with mature working experience looking to become a product manager, and secondarily to someone who's the aspiring product manager.
Good one. So somebody who is mature, who wants to be a product manager, be humble, keep an open mind, have the learn it all attitude. And somebody who is aspiring to be a product manager, who is kind of just getting off the blocks, learn it all for sure, and try to observe how the leaders are working together, and try to sort of imbibe, softer skills of, being a great storyteller, being a great communicator, being a great collaborator, and trying to sort of read people and how we sort of engage with them on a cultural basis.
Very well noted. I look forward to hearing how some of our participants use your advice and see what kind of success they can get with it. Sid, thank you so much for joining being the guest speaker tonight for our interview. Thank you, Tauseef, for being an advisory board member with PLI and for adding your excellent questions and adding also some probing questions there to Sid.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much, Tauseef. Thank you so much, Ganeshan, for your incisive question. I love this. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Have a nice evening. Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.